Welcome! We're going to take this photo and turn it into this photo. We're going to use loads of different tips and tricks within Lightroom Classic, including things like masking, which we always touch on, adaptive profiles, just a bunch of different stuff. Let's get into it. It's Tutorial Tuesday. Welcome back to Tutorial Tuesday, where each week, every Tuesday, we bring you a brand new, fresh photography tutorial. This week we're jumping into Lightroom Classic. Let's go ahead and just start editing this photo. We want to make this a much more vibrant sunset photo because at the moment it's looking a little bit cool. You know, the colors aren't popping the way we want. We probably want to address the exposure a little bit as well. Let's jump into it. The first thing we're going to want to do is actually address this white balance. It's a little bit cool at the moment, a little bit blue. So let's warm this up. We're going to come over to the overall white balance. We're just going to bring that towards this warmer side. That's going to really help, I think. And then immediately, I want to bring those highlights down as well. Working with a raw photo, which makes it a lot easier to kind of play around with like this. Okay, that's looking pretty good initially. It's quite a big kind of change straight away. White balance can do that for sure. The next thing I'm actually going to do is come over onto the left and look at these different presets. Now we're going to try this adaptive sky preset. Last week we looked at how you can use the adaptive portrait presets to edit a portrait nice and quickly. We're going to edit the sky slightly using these presets. Now this is something where Lightroom will use AI to actually address the specific photograph you're editing with masks that it thinks are going to work really well. So that's what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and go for, let's look at gold now. I think that actually looks pretty good. But if we come down here to sunrise, I actually think that looks really nice. Sunset is a little bit too pink. I think it's a bit much, but sunrise works really well for this photo. Just mousing over it, you can see the change. If I actually come off that, you can see how much that is actually affecting the sky. So let's go ahead and click on that. And what that is actually doing is adding a mask to the photo. So if I come up to the masking panel, you can see now there is a sunrise mask. It's just masking that sky. And it's doing things like warming it up, adding saturation, which I think actually works really well. Now, going forward, we're probably going to use a few masks of our own. So let's go ahead into the masking panel here and create a new mask. Let's go linear gradient. I'm going to bring this down from the top of the sky, something like this. I want it nice and feathered there, something like that. Let's right click to intersect this mask with the sky. So it only actually applies the linear gradient onto the sky. So it should go behind these buildings, for example. And I'm actually going to bring the exposure down a little bit, just to darken that top bit of the sky. Something like that. We can always come back and change that later. Let's do the same sort of thing coming from the bottom up so that we draw the viewer's eye more towards this central part where we've got this bridge. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's get back to the overall edit. Now, another thing we might want to apply, which is somewhat new within Lightroom, which is quite exciting. We're going to go into the profile tabs here, which is, it can be a really good way of adding a certain look to your image, right? But there's new profiles available within Lightroom Classic. We're going to look at the adaptive profiles, which again, similar to the adaptive presets, are going to use AI to actually apply a certain look to your photo specifically to try and bring the best out of it. Now, from my experience, this seems to work pretty well some of the time. Actually, it works pretty well a lot of the time, depending on the genre of photo. I found that portraits, especially if you want a moody look to things, it tries to even things out. It doesn't work so well for that kind of thing. But for something like this, if I mouse over the adaptive color here, you can see it's actually doing quite well. It's kind of raising some of those shadows, bringing some of the highlights down. It's probably helping us quite a bit there. So I'm going to go ahead and actually click that. We can always come up and actually adjust the amount that this profile is being applied. So I'm going to leave it at 100 for now, because we can always actually change the look of the photo ourselves. But I think it's quite a useful thing, especially for a photo like this. So let's take a look at how far we've come so far. So if we press the backslash key on the keyboard, we can see where we started. This is what the photo looked like initially. This is where we've taken it to. So that's looking much more like it looked in real life to the eye, right? Very sunsetty, very golden tones, looking pretty good. We might want to bring the overall exposure down just a touch, something like that, just to really accentuate the fact that it is a little bit of darker time, right? It's not as bright as it was looking. Okay, let's go ahead and add another mask. Now, this is where we might start to experiment a little bit. I'm going to bring a radial gradient in. We've got the sun over on the right here. So I'm going to bring this in something like this and just bring that overall exposure up for that mask a little bit of warmth as well. Something like that. A little bit of dehaze. We're going to go negative on the dehaze, something like that. Not too crazy. And then we're going to actually go in and bring in a linear gradient from that side. I want to bring that in across the image. Something like this. I'm just going to bring that exposure up a tiny bit. And the dehaze, I want to bring that down a touch as well. So that's going to simulate kind of light a little bit. And then we might want to go in and just bring the overall exposure down again so that we have this brighter area over on the right. We don't want to go too crazy with that. I think that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and do another radial gradient just across this kind of middle section here. Something like this. I'm going to bring that exposure up just a touch. Not too much. Just a little bit. Something like that. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I actually really like the look of this. Let's go ahead and look at the before and after again. So the backslash key, before, after, that's a lot more sunset feeling, you know? The last thing I might actually do here is just come down and bring that vibrance up just a bit. Not too much. We don't want to go too crazy with that, but I do want to make sure those colors are really rich and popping. And we might even come down to the hue, saturation, and luminance sliders. I'm just going to bring the orange down towards a kind of rich, slightly richer orange. That's looking really nice. Yellow's down just a little bit as well, just to get a slightly more rich and burnt orange within the scene. The blues, I don't want to go too crazy, but I might just bring them over towards the aqua. And then the saturation, I'm just going to bring the purple down a little bit and the magenta down a little bit. And the reason for that is it just feels like there is a fair amount of it within the scene. We might even want to go up and see what happens if we bring the tint towards the green just a little bit. Not too much, because I think we do want some magenta, because there would be, right, with a more sunset kind of vibe. But if we were just to pull some of it out, how does it look? Okay, I think that looks pretty good. It's a tiny adjustment, but I think that actually looks really nice. Let's look at one more before and after. So this is where we started. Very cool tones. You know, maybe a little bit of work to do with the exposure as well. This is where we've got to. So much more of that golden tones. We've addressed the exposure a little bit. It might be that the highlights are down too much now. We might want to bring those up just a touch, just to make sure this is a brighter area, because that is where the sun was coming from. But I think overall, I'm really happy with how we've brought this sunset out. And absolutely a massive part of this is just getting that white balance right. Now, I mentioned that the adaptive profile, which we used here, which I thought was very useful, didn't seem to work as well in certain other situations. I just want to show you what I'm talking about here. So if we go over to something like this food photo, I actually think that this works really well. If we mouse over this, it brightens the food. It gives us nice, vibrant color. I actually think that looks really good, right? That's a nice way of editing that photo. If we come over to this portrait, which is a little bit moodier, right? We've got kind of light on one side, dark on another. If we were to mouse over this, you'll see it tries to even that out, which in this case is not as helpful, because it removes a lot of the kind of mood from the image, which we've got there. It'll even it out. It'll address some of the colors as well, and just try and give you a slightly flatter image, which, like I say, not always as helpful. So something to be used kind of sparingly, I guess, something to be trialed here and there. See how you like it. I really like it for landscapes, but maybe not so much for portraits. Now, I'd love to know, would you have stopped earlier with the edit of this photo? Is this something you would have done a little bit differently? Would you have maybe done less, done more? I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments. It's always super interesting to find out how other people would apply some of these techniques. So I'd love to hear it. You can check out the full list of all the kit we used for these videos, for this photo as well, the GFX 100 RF. Oh, lovely compact medium format camera. There's links to all that stuff down in the description, so you can go and check that out for yourself. Don't forget to like, subscribe, so there's new content all the time. I'll see you in the next video. But until then, as always, thanks for watching.